Countless suggestions have been made for stopping the massive oil leak deep below the Gulf of Mexico. One of the most controversial, nuke it. CNN Deborah Farrick is joining us from New York. She's looking at this. What if they did decide to use what they call the nuclear option? How far-fetched is that, Deb?
Well, it's not as far-fetched as you think, Wolf, and as a matter of fact, the public debate, as you can imagine, would be huge, especially with so many countries moving towards nuclear disarmament. However, the scope of the current ecological disaster is so great that some people are saying it is really time to consider this seriously.
3, 2, 1. It's a crazy last resort kind of idea. But what if it works? What if nuking the well finally stops the oil from surging into the Gulf?
Do you remember where you were standing when this nuclear device was detonated?
Oh, yes. I was standing at the control point. It was exciting to know that it went well and that everything worked about as we expected.
80-year-old Milo Nordyke is one of the few people you'll likely meet who saw not one, but 9 nuclear explosions. He helped run Project Plowshare, a program in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s to find peaceful, practical uses for low-radiation nuclear devices.
With the tremendous energy of the peaceful atom.
When you see what's going on in the Gulf, did it sort of come into your mind, this is a perfect use for some sort of a small nuclear device?
Oh, it certainly did. And, of course, knowing that the Russians had done it a number of times, brought it to the top of my attention.
That's right, the Russians, who successfully shut down 4 out of 5 runaway gas wells by nuking them.
The red and white is the device.
As seen on YouTube, this Russian well had been burning nonstop for 3 years.
They said the gas flame was so high that it could be seen 50 miles away.
Watch as the nuclear device detonates. A shockwave rattles the earth. Moments later, the flame extinguishes and the well is finally sealed.
The shock wave would initially melt the rock, and then it would crush the rock, and then it would compress the rock so that it would be crushed, completely shut.
There really isn't any certainty that doing this kind of a detonation under the water and in this particular geologic situation would work.
A nuclear option to plug the well is downright laughable, says Nathan Holtman, who has studied civilian nuclear power.
There are certainly questions about radiation leakage. There are questions about damage to ecosystems. There are questions about the impact of a shockwave.
But because of where the nuclear device would be placed, Nordyke disputes concerns about radiation release or damage to wildlife. The blast would take place more than a mile below the ocean floor near the ruptured well. The nuclear device would be lowered down a secondary tunnel similar to the relief well now being built.
The explosion tends to seal all the rock around it so that radiation doesn't escape.
The force of the shockwave is the great unknown. Could it destabilize more oil wells miles away? Even Milo Nordyke admits that threat remains unclear, but says in a worst-case scenario, it's a last resort worth considering.
Now, the agency in charge of nuclear security for the United States says exploding a nuclear device in the Gulf of Mexico is not really an option. And, of course, timing is a factor because while the blueprints exist for low-radiation devices, it still would need to be built, and that clearly would take time.
Wow. All right, Deb, thanks very much. Deborah Farrick reporting.